Dozens of people were this week killed in Mangu local government area of Plateau State, with the latest carnage coming just over a month after more than 100 people were mowed down in the same vicinity by alleged Fulani herdsmen in a bloodbath that shocked the entire nation. This week's attacks began on Tuesday and continued into Wednesday, even after a 24-hour curfew was imposed by the state government. In the meantime, Speaker of the House of Representatives Tajuddin Abbas is reported to be planning to meet with President Bola Tinubu with a view to exploring measures to secure the lives and property of the people on the plateau. Security analyst Dr. Kabir Adamu joins us now to discuss this development, the military hierarchy's explanation regarding what's fueling the insecurity on the plateau, and what fresh measures may be needed to curb the perennial cycle of violence. Many thanks for joining us on Newsday, Dr. Adamu. Thank you so much for being here. Good afternoon. I'm going to get straight into my first question, and it's all about the origins of this crisis, because we hear so many different narratives. I know this morning we had a conversation with Dachung Bagos of Plateau, a former lawmaker of Plateau State, and the implication there was that this is something that is more economically driven. We've spoken to the Commissioner of Information for Plateau State, who says that this is more of an ethnic cleansing exercise. Of course, we know about the farmers and herders. What is the foundational issue in Plateau State as far as you're concerned?
Thank you very much, and once again, good afternoon. The foundations of the conflict that we're seeing in Plateau State at the moment is rooted in several factors. One of them is the issue of settler and indigene dichotomy that has not yet been resolved. Several commissions of inquiry, both administrative and judicial, have been put in place, and each of them has identified this as one of the reasons. The second one is the political dynamics in Plateau State. Sadly, violence has been politicized, it's been weaponized, and it has become an instrument for influencing political outcomes. Number three is the existence of what I would describe as ethnic militias that are armed and that have become instruments for achieving political objectives. Number four is climate change and the inability for both the federal and the state government to address in terms of mitigating the consequences of climate change. Then number five is the failure of the criminal justice system as well as the traditional justice system to identify and then to punish offenders. And then, of course, in conclusion, and this kind of caps it all, is poor governance. Most of the issues that have listed from 1 to 5 are issues of governance. And if there is an improvement in governance, then all of them would be addressed more or less. So in a nutshell, these are the issues. In the course of this conversation, perhaps we can expand each of the issues.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kabir. Now, in terms of the attempts to, prevent further attacks of this nature, we did see that the chairman of the Christian Association of Nigeria in Mangu local government area, that's Reverend Timothy Daluk, has alleged that the Nigerian military in the area is supervising the killings that are taking place there. Of course, he's been invited to the DHQ, but Khan has also backed his statement. Do you see any reason that this might actually be true?
No, with all sense of responsibility, I don't. However, the reality is that it appears to be true. And what do I mean by that? As far back as 2010, a military operation was implemented in Plateau State called Operation Safe Haven. Now, this is 14 years since that operation has been in place. And if I am going to look back to analyze the performance of that military operation, the fact that you and I are having a conversation about the killing of 30 persons, and this is just a few days ago. Before then, over 100 people were killed. So it will be almost impossible to say that that military operation is successful. And I'm going to call squarely on the state legislature as well as the national legislature to ask the critical question, why is it that we are not asking questions around the mandate of these operations? These operations are meant to be stopgap operations. And if one is going on for 14 years and has not met its objective, why are we still funding the operation? How, you can't continue an activity that is not successful in all ramifications. And I'm not putting the blame, as it were, on the military. Perhaps the dynamics in Plateau State does not need a military operations. And that's why I mentioned that several commissions of inquiry have been, both administrative and judicial, have been implemented, and their reports have been submitted. So perhaps what we need, more or less, is something like restorative justice. Restorative justice that would bring the two sides together, that would harmonize them, so that they can together face the common enemy. You mentioned that in your conversation you did interview a former member of the legislature from Plateau State. You also interviewed a state government official. But it would be interesting that you also interview perhaps someone from the Hada community, the Fulani community, so that you hear from them their grievances. And if we're going to pursue restorative justice, the two sides need to come together. Now, whether their claim is logical or not, transformative justice would require that we hear that grievance. Whether it is real or perceived, that grievance needs to be addressed. So my point is that the legislature, especially at the federal level, need to ask critical questions regarding the military operation, how it's being funded, and if it's not appropriate for the crisis, the conflict, then perhaps we should look at another solution. I am, not supportive of the continued funding of an operation that is not really yielding us the fruit. So pursue transformative justice, pursue restorative justice, and then more importantly, the politicians need to invest in peace building by pursuing a governance style that preaches equity, that provides for inclusion, and of course that is also have diversity elements in it. So if we have all of these three things in governance, I think perhaps we'd look back and say, yes, we are making progress. But as of now, I don't see these two things that I've mentioned in terms of how the legislature at the state level and at the federal level is asking critical questions regarding how military operations are being implemented, and then in terms of the pursuance of a governance that preaches equity, diversity, and inclusion. The third point I would like to emphasize is the capacity of the state government to monitor the activities of federal security agencies. I don't know who the Commissioner of Security is in Plateau State. We haven't heard his voice. So perhaps the competence of that commissioner would also need to be asked. If he's competent, then perhaps he should be empowered by the state governor so that we can see more of his ability to manage the role that the federal security agencies are playing. But bottom line, I don't think that statement by the representatives of CAN in Plateau State is helpful in the current circumstances. I do not also think that the military or any of the security agencies are taking sides in the crisis. What is important is for leadership, political leadership, religious leadership, ethnic leadership, to call a spade and tell themselves the truth. They need to live together as one.
Right, thank you. That's very beautifully expressed. Now, when we look back at the Christmas massacre that took place in Bokos local government area, there was a lot of conversation about failure in intelligence gathering. However, the Middle Belt Forum came out at that time to make a statement and say that, in fact, they have all the information, they know where these people are, and they're able to direct authorities as to where they need to be fished out. Now, when we look at the most recent event in Mangu local government area, and of course the governor putting into place a 24-hour curfew, it shows that intelligence gathering is at work. Now, my question is that these people are still able to overcome preventionary steps that are taken. We've moved from reactionary measures. We're now at preventionary measures. Why do you think there is an inability to still protect Plateau State, given the fact that we are now seeing intelligence gathering being put to use? That's the first, my first question. The second one is, what will it take for there to be the political will for people to step in and ensure that this crisis is put to an end?
Okay, intelligence is unfortunately being bandied around in Nigeria without necessarily understanding what it means. I believe that just like in Plateau State, and several other states in the country. Just to highlight the fact that I run a consultancy, it's called Beacon Consulting, and we know that in 2023, about 9,000 Nigerians were killed. Now, point I'm trying to make is killings in Nigeria have reached a level that perhaps we should ask ourselves the critical question. Is the leadership in our security sector, are they really conscious of their mandate? If they are not conscious of their mandate, why is perhaps, if you look at the democratic setting, the executive arm, the legislative arm, why is the legislative arm allowing this to happen? Why are they not taking it with the kind of seriousness that we took when a fraud was detected in one of the ministries in government? 9,000 people in a year, and we're still discussing as if these are ants that were killed. So that's number one. I think we need to take responsibility. Accountability needs to be introduced into the security sector. If there is a mandate for any organization to prevent killing in Plateau State, and that organization failed, then that organization should be held responsible. And that responsibility can come in form of either changing the leadership of that organization, or in some instances, even trying that organization, because lives have been lost. So somebody should be held responsible. And I think I cannot overemphasize that point, accountability in intelligence. In other words, perhaps there should be an inquiry. Was intelligence provided? If, like the Middle Belt Forum said, there was intelligence, and that needs to be interrogated. I must emphasize that. If that intelligence was provided, who failed to act on it? If, of course, someone acted on it, but because for some political reasons, which is what we're hearing, there wasn't, decision to move towards stopping that attack from happening. Who took that political decision? So these are the kind of things that an inquiry, and I think that inquiry needs to be led by the presidency, given the issue that we're discussing. So that's number one. How is the intelligence process being handled? How are the decisions to take operational issues around the intelligence that is collected being handled? The presidency needs to look into it. If the presidency doesn't do that, then the legislation needs to step in, because that's what our democracy provides for. With regards to the second element of your question, what do we need to do to stop or prevent this? In simple terms, it's really about accountability. And I'm really delighted that Arise TV and other TV stations are highlighting this issue. The more we highlight it, I think the more action would be taken. Of course, the media, as the fourth estate of the realm, has that responsibility. And so I'm really delighted. But us citizens, I think it's also absolutely important that we continue to speak up and show up in terms of our responsibilities, civic responsibilities. The challenge, and I must emphasize this, is social media, unfortunately, is spreading a lot of fake news. And I haven't seen any concurrent action by either the state government or at the federal level to reduce this fake news. The fake news is not helping matters. Because we're in a public forum, I don't really want to highlight any of them, but I know I've received a tremendous amount of fake news that is trying to indicate a narrative that is not helping us. And that these two narratives are ethnic and religious. If we allow this to degenerate into an ethnic or religious conflict, then it's going to spread beyond the plateau. And that is where we need to step in, stop this proliferation of fake news.
Thank you so much. Dr. Kabir Adamu, it's always a delight to have you here on Newsday. We appreciate your insight and your recommendations as always. Thank you. Dr. Kabir Adamu is a security and policy analyst. Thank you for joining us on Newsday.